Well, I want to start by saying good morning and welcome to the District Consolidated Monitoring Informational Webinar for the 2024-25 Consolidated Monitoring Season. My name is Erica Tipton, and I'm a Title I Part A consultant in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support. All right, so before we get started this morning, there just got a few housekeeping items to go over. I know people will begin hopping in throughout the call. Can I do a quick, can someone give me a thumbs up or let me know if you can hear me?
You got you.
Thank you. All right, so if everyone could, thank you, I appreciate that. If everyone could please ensure that your mic is muted during the presentation, that'll help us with sound quality. We will stop after each section just to check in and see if anyone has questions. You can also use the chat or the raise hand function in Teams, and we'll address your questions at stopping points. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out the link to all the participants shortly after the call so that you can go back and refer to it throughout the season as you need to. So here's what our agenda looks like this morning. In just a moment, you'll hear a welcome from our Associate Commissioner in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, Dr. Kelly Foster. After that, I'm going to talk about the flow of communication. We'll look at a high-level overview of the monitoring process as a whole, and we'll talk about creating the visit schedule. Then you'll hear from Assistant Director David Malonti as he discusses how to provide evidence and to avoid personally identifiable information. I'll talk about the report process, and then you'll hear a brief introduction from all of the participating programs. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Foster to get us started.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I am actually in an airport traveling back from a CCSSO meeting, so I won't stay on here long, but I did want to welcome you guys and try to take away any angst that you might have because your district's been chosen for monitoring. We totally get that. Monitoring nobody likes. We don't like it when the federal government reaches out to us and says, hey, we're going to be monitoring your Title I program or your school improvement funds. So just so you know, lots of times when districts get picked for monitoring, they think it's because they spoke up on a topic or an issue, or we're picking on you, or Kelly doesn't like you. None of that's true. There's a risk assessment tool that you use to determine districts that go through the monitoring process each year. So we want to make this a painless process. It's all about continuous improvement and providing you back a high quality feedback that can help your districts move forward. So just know that going into that. And if any point during the process you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me personally, and I'll work with our consultants to make this a process as easy as possible. So once again, thanks for participating today, and let me know if you all have any questions at the end. Feel free to reach out to me via email. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so we're going to start by taking a brief look at how the flow of communication is going to work throughout the monitoring process. I am going to work mainly with the designated district point of contact to develop a schedule for all of our programs for the days of our visit. Typically, the point of contact that I work with at the district level is the Title I coordinator. So that's who I'm going to be reaching out to initially, unless you want to designate someone else for that task. The reason that we typically work with the Title I coordinator is simply due to the fact that every state or every district in the state of Kentucky does receive Title I funds. So we know there's always going to be a point person in place for Title I. If you do wish to designate someone else just to work on scheduling, that's totally fine. Please just reach out to me and let me know, and I will share my email address at the end of this presentation. So at this point, Title I coordinators, this slide is mainly for you. 8 weeks before your visit, you're going to receive an email from me. Now, some of you actually might get it 10 weeks before your visit. If you've got a holiday built into your preparation time, I did try to back up that notification to you so that you have a couple of extra weeks to account for that holiday. In that email, I will provide you with a scheduling tool that details each program's needs for our visit, and I'll also provide you with a sample scheduling template that you can use to create your own. So there's no reinventing the wheel. We're going to give you as many tools as we can to help you get the schedule together. That the scheduling tool that I send will detail the personnel that we need to interview while we're at the district, the time that we need to interview, and the location where we would like to conduct the interviews. And we'll also include any other logistics that might help you in creating a schedule. So I usually give you about a week to review the tool that I send and the template that I send. And then about a week after, I reach out to set up a Teams call where we can go through the logistics together to get you started and to talk through a timeline for completing a draft schedule for us. But you're always welcome to reach out to me earlier once you get that scheduling tool if you're just ready to go. I am just an email or a phone call away. The point that the schedule is finalized, I then connect you with your Title I lead, and then you're done with me unless I'm your Title I lead. And then you'll have a brief check-in call with that person. On that call, you'll talk through the schedule as well as any other logistics for the trip and answer any lingering questions that you might have. The Title I lead will also check and make sure at that time that all of the evidence has been uploaded to either SharePoint or Title I next, and we'll talk about that in the next few slides. This check-in happens about 2 weeks prior to your visit, and then also the week before your visit, your Title I lead might send a quick check-in email or give you a quick phone call just one more time and make sure that everything is good to go, especially for those early visits where weather may play a factor in our travel. Before we move on to the next topic, are there any questions? David, do we have any questions in the chat?
Not in the chat right now.
Okay, good deal. Right, if there are no questions at this point, I'll pass it over to David Melanti, who's going to talk about evidence.
Good morning, David Melanti. I'm one of the assistant directors in the division in which we oversee consolidated monitoring. So I'll talk to you a little bit about providing evidence. There will be some caveats here for the folks that have opted into Title I Next. So generally what we do is we provide a set of SharePoint folders and share those with appropriate people as elected across the district. Those folders are generally laid out to coincide with each program's set of requirements. So the major caveat here is that if you have opted in for Title I Next, we are going to ask you for Title I Part A to use a Title I Next system to provide documentation. And we will grant access to our folks as needed through that system. The second caveat is some of you may have opted in at a district level only. So in that case, we will review district level requirements and documentation through Title I Next, but your schools may have a set of SharePoint folders if they have not been opted into that system. So for the evidence, we're going to be asking for that to be up to date and either uploaded or within Title I Next within a couple weeks of the visit. That really gives us enough time to do some preparatory review. It allows us to say, yes, we don't need to review this question further, or it allows us to kind of target some questions we may have based on what we've reviewed. We do ask that you do not send us links to things such as Google Drive, because many times we have it's a total nightmare for us to get access to that sometimes, and makes it very hard for the this process to kind of work smoothly. We will ask you to upload into SharePoint folders as labeled. Again, depending on the program, you're going to see that they kind of follow the program's requirements, each program's requirements. Essentially, what you're going to have is you're going to have a district level folder, and then within that folder, you're going to have some things for maybe Title I, but definitely for Title II, Title III, and the rest of the programs that are coming on site to visit you. Let's see, and last but not least on this slide, having some clear labeling for your evidence will help the reviewer know exactly what we're looking at and looking for. For example, if it's Section 1, Question 2, in the program's checklist, you might basically label that as section 1, question 2, or question 3, whatever the question is. So the more you can make that align to the program's checklist, the easier it's going to make it for that person to follow your documentation. Okay. So something I think we mention every year, but that is super important, is please avoid uploading any kind of personally identifiable information. You know, your district is going to have potentially several people across the district with access to the SharePoint or to Title I Next. We're asking that if you do have something that you think is vitally important, that you ensure that PII is redacted. You can do that through, marking through it and scanning, or using a Word document to kind of mark through or delete potential pieces of PII. We will have some programs that will request to review PII on site. So they will probably be asking for a secure document submission through a program such as Move It, or they may ask for a secure space within the district office or within a school, so they can sit down and review those without having to take ownership of any of those pieces of documentation. So just to give you an idea of sometimes what we see uploaded in some of our documentation and that would qualify as PII, anything with a student's name, and I'm going to go through each one of these, a parent or guardian or other family member names. That could be a grandparent's name, for example, if a student is residing with a grandparent. Student or family addresses, social security numbers. Sometimes we forget about SSIDs, but those are PII as well. Dates of birth, places of birth, mother's maiden name might come up in some of your documentation. It's anything else that alone or in combination can be used to identify a certain set of a certain student down to the student level. It could even be things such as academic data, test data, for example. If you have one English learner, for example, in a school, and you provide documentation that says, here's where our English learner scored, that is potentially a piece of PII. So if you think it's PII, it probably is. We ask you to avoid any type of upload of that information. If you're not sure, reach out to us or your Title I lead, and we can help guide you in the right direction for that. Erica, you've got to come off mute.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Before we move on to the reporting, are there any questions at this point?
Yeah, there's one. It says our district will be using Title I Next for federal programs that are being monitored, such as preschool, that have not been using Title I Next. Should they be added, or will they submit evidence through SharePoint? They will submit evidence through SharePoint. The only program that is utilizing Title I Next right now is Title I Part A. And that is just because we kind of we are paying for that out of Title I money directly. So we will not be adding other programs unless we kind of do a joint effort down the road. So yeah, Title I Part A is the only program, if you've opted in, that will be using Title I Next.
Okay, thank you. And SharePoint access will be granted to districts around November 15th. So be watching for an email. It might come from a Microsoft, or it might come directly from our data manager, Wendy Spalding. So just be on the lookout for the link. Everyone who is invited on this call will receive a link to your SharePoint folders. Right, so now we're going to move on and talk about what happens after we leave the district. 8 weeks after we leave, each KDE program that participated on your visit will provide their own individual program report. That report is focused on compliance and will also detail strengths seen across the district and potentially recommendations for improvement, and of course, if possible or applicable, if applicable, it will have compliance findings to address. These reports are tools for the district and are not shared publicly. Each program coordinator will work with their assigned KDE consultant to satisfy any compliance findings that require follow-up. 12 weeks after our visit, a consolidated monitoring report will be sent to the superintendent. This report is a public report and will be posted on the KDE website. There are no actionable compliance findings on this report, but we do detail recommendations that we do hope you take action on. The purpose of this report is just to give a high-level overview of our visit that will detail common strengths that were seen across all participating programs and common improvements and recommendations that could help to strengthen your collaborative efforts across all programs. So we're going to switch gears here and hear from each individual program that's participating in consolidated monitoring this year. They're going to share with you details about how to prepare for your visit with them if they're a program for which you received the funds. The programs listed here are the programs that could potentially be visiting your district, and that is Title I, and that does include Title I Part A, neglected, Title II Part A, Title III, Title IV Part A, Title V Part B, alternative education programs, and preschool. So I'm going to get us started with Title I and what to expect. We typically are in the district 1 to 2 days. Sometimes it has gone to 3 days. It just depends on the size of your district and the number of schools served, or the number of schools that we're electing to visit. We do need to meet with the Title I coordinator and the points of contact for homeless, foster care, and English learners, as well as the finance officer, the principals of your public and private schools if you serve private schools, and then any other district staff that are paid with Title I funds, like a bookkeeper, an instructional coach, a parent and family engagement liaison. Our checklists are posted on KDE's website on the Title I Part A Documents and Resources page under the Monitoring section. And those are always available. You won't have to wait for SharePoint access to view those, but they will also be available to you in your SharePoint folders. please don't miss the school level folders. I want to emphasize that, and it's mainly directed toward those who do need to use SharePoint for evidence as opposed to Title I Next. Within the main Title I folder in SharePoint, there will be a folder labeled School Level Monitoring. And then within that folder, you'll find a folder for each individual Title I served school that we're going to visit. Some districts will prefer to have one person, such as the Title I coordinator, upload all of the documentation into SharePoint. Others have preferred to allow their building principals to upload their own evidence into their folders to just better disperse the workload. There's no wrong answer there. It's up to your discretion. If you would like your principals to have access to SharePoint, please let me know. As of right now, when we release SharePoint access in mid-November, Title I coordinators, you'll receive access, but your principals won't. But if you want to email me because you want them to have access, you're welcome to do that. Also, in order to best prepare your principals for what to expect, new this year, we are trying out a pre-recorded webinar specifically geared toward your principals. So this will just be a quick 15-minute webinar that your principals can watch at their convenience. And I am in the middle of recording that right now. As soon as I get that wrapped up, Title I coordinators, if you would be on the lookout for that email in the next week or so as an additional resource that you can give to your principals to hopefully help relieve their fears and also give them some good places to start with preparation. So evidence, as David mentioned, evidence for Title I is due 2 weeks prior to our visit. And the required and suggested documentation for Title I is detailed on our checklists. The Munis reports, or the ERP, the new system, we're kind of using those interchangeably right now, but your Munis reports that are needed for us are for the current school year and last year. So we'll be looking at 310L and 310K projects. But for all other evidence, all your programming evidence, parent and family engagement evidence, as in terms of actual events that you've hosted, we're just going to be looking at this current school year. Please upload about 1 or 2 pieces of relevant documentation for each indicator. And I think David already touched on this a little bit, but for the districts currently utilizing Title I Next as a storage platform, we are going to be sending some additional information about how that's going to work and how KDE will obtain temporary access to your account so that you don't have to upload documentation to SharePoint. And that's going to be a mixed bag depending on if your district opted in but your schools didn't, or if your district and schools are all using SharePoint. So we'll give you some further direction on that down the road, specifically geared toward you and your district. But having said that, you're all going to have access to SharePoint, even if you're using Title I Next just for Title I. So if you want to go in there and peek around in the folders, you can get your checklists from there, some Munis instructions from there, but we'll also provide them in other ways. When it comes to documentation, please think quality and not quantity. A few pieces of detailed documentation are much more effective at demonstrating compliance than a dozen pieces of documentation without detail. We do have a new resource available on our Title I Part A Documents and Resources page called the Documentation Training Webinar. This recording includes a walkthrough of all of our monitoring checklists, examples of effective documentation, and just some general documentation tips. And you can always contact your assigned Title I lead anytime you have questions about evidence. And I will say too, as an aside, when I send out the recording for this webinar today, in the next week, I will have a link to the recording, and I will also attach this PowerPoint. And that way you can all have access to the links that are referenced throughout, and you can find the resources that you need. So we do ask to include a brief 30-minute exit interview at the end of our interviews for Title I. And at that interview, the team just needs to meet and discuss some kind of high-level initial thoughts that we have, but we won't be able to share with you in that meeting what your findings are. We do need to go back to the office and discuss as a whole team. Typically what will happen is that we'll all disperse to our interviews, and then we won't be able to talk to each other until we come back and kind of compare notes and ask questions of each other after we've left the district. So at that meeting, it'll just be kind of a very general first impressions, and we'll answer any questions that you have at that point. We do ask that the Title I coordinator be at that interview. Who else attends that interview is up to you. The superintendent is welcome. Any other district staff that you would like to participate is absolutely welcome.
Erica, there's
Yes.
one question in the chat.
Okay.
For the 8-week follow-up, will KDE work directly with the individual program for follow-up pieces, or will all follow-up communication run through the Title I coordinator as the district contact?
Okay, thank you. Good question. So at that 8-week mark, or 10 weeks, if there's a holiday impacting your preparation time, I only reach out to the Title I coordinator because we're just working on scheduling. However, I also copy individual program leads that are going to be attending your visit, and that will kind of trigger them to know, okay, it's time for this district to get started, and they'll reach out as well with any additional information that is programmatic specific. So at that 8-week mark, Title I coordinators, you and I are just working to prepare the schedule. But if you want to also talk with the Title I lead that reaches out to you, or any of your other programs want to work directly with their, like if the Title IV team sends you an email, okay, we're 8 weeks out, here's what you need to do. You're welcome to work with that program as well. So we won't leave you high and dry. All of the programs are available at that 8-week mark, or even before. If you've got questions now and you want to reach out to your program contacts, if you want to talk to somebody in Alt Ed, you want to talk to somebody in preschool or Title III, you're welcome to do that. And we'll have contact information for each program at the end of this slide so that you know kind of where to get started with your programmatic questions. Are there any other questions before we move on to Title II? Or sorry, I think we have Title I Part A neglected next. All right. Moving on then, we are going to hear from Title I Part A neglected.
Hello, thanks, Erica, and thank you for not neglecting us there. Thank you all for joining us. So Title I Part A neglected, the duration of the visit is going to be about 2 hours. And so the folks that we're going to meet with, and just to clarify too, and Monica, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Campbell County is the only district that this is applying to for this year.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
awesome. Thanks,
that
Monica.
is correct, Wes.
Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
this is going to specifically apply to Campbell County. So about 2 hours is what we'll need. We'll meet with the Title I neglected coordinator. Your point of contact for the neglected facility will need to be included, the finance officer, the transition coordinator, and any program teachers. And we love to be able to interview students sometimes as well. So if we can facilitate that, that'd be great. The checklist, so on the KDE website, and also it's going to be in your SharePoint folder, the neglected checklist, it's part of the Title I-A checklist. So we make it pretty easy for you there. It's just one of the sections on the Title I-A checklist. And as far as evidence specific to this, one thing that we do need, as David was saying a couple of weeks prior to the visit, in addition to the information there on that checklist, we need Munis reports, and I guess this year it's not Munis. I forget what the new name of it is. Erica, correct me. What's the new name?
ERP, but I'm sure
ERP.
for several years we're going to use Munis and ERP interchangeably.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Munis -ERP.
just to get used to the new name.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got you. Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, those ERP reports are needed for the current year, and the prior year there. So all the other evidence is going to be for the current year only. The contacts are going to be myself, I'm Wes Blake, and Monica, who we just heard from a minute ago. And then there'll be an exit interview at the end, like we were speaking to earlier, and that's about 30 minutes or so. So that's the gist of it for the neglected. Any questions? And if Campbell County has any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Monica. We're happy to talk with y'all and help you out. All right, thank y'all.
Wes, David, are there any other questions in the chat at this point?
No, not right now.
All right, good deal. We will move on then to hear from the Title II Part A team.
Good morning, everyone. Dana Kelly with Title II Part A team. We typically conduct our visit in actually one day, but that depends on the size of the district and the allocations of funds, so we may need 2 days. We will need to meet, of course, with the Title II coordinator, the district finance officer, and actually any district or school staff who are paid with Title IIA funds, such as instructional coaches, class size reduction staff, those involved in teacher induction programs. If you actually allocate funds to the school, we would also like to meet with the principals and actually any participating non-public school staff. In the SharePoint folders that's been mentioned, you will complete the self-assessment for Title II. This document can also be found in Title II Handbook in the appendix and also on our webpage. This document mirrors what we are looking for during the monitoring visit. On the self-assessment document, you will find, again, some suggested types of evidence, but as always, you're not limited to those. So follow what Eric had said earlier about evidence. You can submit documentation that you think best represents your program. Please upload those documents 2 weeks prior to the visit. In addition to the self-assessment and supporting documentation, we will need your current and prior munis, 401L and 401K uploaded. Title II has 4 staff members, so your visit might contain 2 to 4 as 1 or 2 teams, but one of the team members will actually be your Title II lead who will communicate with you. We don't require an exit interview, but can provide one at your request, which is usually around 30 minutes. So any questions? If not, that's Title II.
Okay, thank you, Dana. If there are no questions, we can move on to hear from our Title III folks.
Good morning, I'm Cayman Triplett, one of the Title III consultants. So typically our visit takes 1 day and it's usually about 2 hours max. The Title III or EL coordinator will need to be present at the meeting. Sometimes the finance officer has joined in the past too, but that's not necessary. They're welcome, but again, not necessary. The checklists are all in SharePoint, and then you'll need to upload all pertinent information and data to the SharePoint folder. The evidence, again, is due 2 weeks prior to the visit, and we will be using that checklist as we go through and look at documentation. So as long as you have pertinent information and data to adhere to each of those items, that's what we're looking for. And as mentioned before, quality over quantity. And as well, please include the Munis reports 345L and 345K. For the visits, it will either be myself or Brandy Neal, the other Title III consultant, just depending, it might be both of us. As well, Neil Watts might be joining on some of the visits. So those will be the people at the visits, but you're also welcome to reach out to any of us if you have any questions prior to. And then the exit interview it's optional. If the district would like to have an exit interview, you can request that, but typically we don't have an exit interview. So unless there are any questions, that's all we have for Title III.
No other questions right now.
Thank you. All right, let's hear from Title IV Part A.
Hello, good morning. I'm Lee Bowling. I'm a program consultant with Title IV Part A. Our branch manager, Layla Brewer, and I will be conducting the Title IV Part A site visits. Our interviews will last 1 to 2 days, depending on the number of programs being supported with your Title IV Part A funds. We will review the current year, that's 552L, and the previous year, 552K. We will need to interview the Title IV Part A coordinator and the finance officer individually for about an hour each. We will also need to interview anyone that's being paid with Title IV Part A funds, as well as any additional relevant staff, such as principals. We'll also need to meet with administrators at any of your private non-public schools that are being served as well. The Title IV Part A monitoring tool and self-assessment are posted on the KDE Title IV Part A webpage and will also be available for you in your SharePoint folder. The monitoring tool includes evidence examples of items that may be used to satisfy any potential findings. And the self-assessment can be used as a checklist for the district to ensure all sections have the corresponding documentation or responses uploaded. Please review the monitoring tool and any information listed in your approved GMAP application, and then upload evidence that the district feels would satisfy that section of the tool. Our questions during our interviews will be connected to the sections of the monitoring tool itself. So each district will be assigned a KDE Title IV Part A team lead who will remain in contact with your Title IV Part A coordinator prior to your district's monitoring, and will also be the point of contact for any required follow-up. And if we don't have any questions, I'll pass it back to Erica.
No questions.
Okay, and I think our Title V consultant is out today, so David is going to step in for her.
Yeah, so for Title V, rural and low income, I just want to clarify that we will be monitoring for those applicable districts, the RLIS or rural low income schools program only. Some of you may receive a direct grant from USAID through the Small Rural Schools Initiative. We do not monitor that one. So this only applies to RLIS districts only. Typically, the visit is very short, 1 day, 30 minutes to an hour for this program. In fact, the checklist is only 6 questions long, and that focuses on how the district determines needs and use of funds, how the district determines allowability, and ensures that expenditures are allowable and align with the checklist, and supplement, not supplant. So those 3 big areas, if you will, over 6 questions. Shoshana will need to meet with the Title I coordinator and finance officer. Again, that checklist is posted on the KDE website and will be available in SharePoint. Again, evidence due 2 weeks prior to the visit, and except for Munis or ERP, we'll be looking at evidence for the current year only. For your budget reports, we will be looking at the L and K projects. And again, if you need to reach out, if you're one of those recipient districts and you need to reach out, please reach out to Shoshana Williams.
Okay, thank you. And we will move on to hear from our alternative education programs team.
Hello, everyone. I'm Letitia Porter, alternative education consultant. So the AltEd monitoring team will be visiting each alternative education program in each district that is participating in consolidated monitoring. Generally, we will be there several hours up to a full day. While we are there, we would like to meet with a central office contact. We would like to meet with the principal or leadership of the program, a mental health counselor, teachers, and students. So about 8 weeks prior to your visit, you'll receive an email from me. That email will have directions, it'll have more information for you. It will kind of give more details for you on what we'll be looking for as far as evidence. That evidence will be uploaded into SharePoint. We do ask that that is done 2 weeks prior to the visit so we can prepare. And then just also make sure, a lot of times with the alternative education programs, sometimes the principal will be doing the uploading. So, like Erica said earlier, just make sure that that principal or whoever is doing that uploading, that they have access to those folders. So in addition to the evidence folders, you will also see a self-reflection tool in SharePoint for you, and you will just go in and complete that in SharePoint for us. Again, 2 weeks prior to the visit. I think that's about it. I will serve as the main point of contact. There are 3 other consultants on the monitoring team. We have Christina Green, Florence Chang, and Jessica Napier, and so you may be seeing them as well over the course of monitoring. And I think that's all I have. Thanks, everyone.
Erica, we do have a question that goes back to Title III. On a Title III audit, is there any chance outcomes addressed the woeful underfunding in EL programs? Thanks. So, Cayman, do you want to take a shot at that?
I'm sorry, I had taken a phone call. Can you repeat that for me?
I think in the chat, someone was asking if you're going to be addressing or taking into consideration the current underfunding for EL initiatives.
I mean, I think we'll look at the program overall, and I understand that that's a concern. I think that, Neil, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure, I can just, yeah, I can add in there and say, well, we're going to be open during the monitoring process, for back and forth conversations, and we're always open for, feedback from the districts, opportunities that we may be able to support and improve. So, we can definitely have that conversation on that.
Okay, thank you all. Let's see, let's move on to hear from our state-funded preschool folks.
Hello, my name is Tammy Rutherford. I'm a consultant inside the Early Learning Unit, which is part of the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. The duration of our visit will depend on the size of your district. It could be 1 to 3 days. That's going to be determined again by the size of your district, how many preschool classrooms you have, and the number of schools where the preschool classrooms are located. We will need to meet with the preschool coordinator, preschool teachers, and instructional assistants, principals, if applicable. What that means is if you have a preschool classroom that's inside an elementary school, but the principal is not the preschool coordinator and isn't heavily involved in preschool, we don't necessarily need to meet with them. They're welcome to join if they would like. And also sometimes we have directors of special ed who like to also join us as well, and they are welcome as well. The self-study will be available in your SharePoint folder. It's one self-study that you can use for all your classrooms, so you do not have to turn in a self-study for every classroom that you have. Evidence will be due 2 weeks prior to our visit. It's required and suggested documentation for a state-funded preschool is detailed on the self-study. The contact for the actual visit, the lead contact will be assigned a Title I team lead for any program questions, program level questions you have before or after. I am the contact. And we do not provide an exit interview at the end of our visit. So if there are no questions, that's it for preschool.
Thanks, Tammy. David, are we okay in the chat for now?
We are okay. Yes.
Okay. So we've got one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go. Someone have a question?
This is Tammy. I think I do see a question in the chat. If a district has multiple programs, do you see that?
Oh, yep, I just see that. Yes, if a district has multiple programs being monitored, are the visits spaced out because the district staff involved will be the same for different programs? So Erica, you might want to take that one.
Yes, and thank you, Tammy, for helping us catch that one. Yes, we are aware that many of you wear multiple hats. So the reason that we tend to spread our visit out over 3 days is because sometimes we have to, knowing that one person may be over Title I as well as Title II, 3, 4. You know, we've been to some districts where it's a one man or one woman show, and so we don't want to overwhelm you. We want to give you plenty of time to rest and eat and breathe. So the Title I coordinator and I will be working really closely together, and then Title I, as you're working with your colleagues on your end, you have control over where we're going and when we're going there. So as you look at your schedule, just make sure that we'll make sure together that we're both being mindful of making sure there are no double bookings, making sure that people have ample time to have lunch or take a break so that you aren't feeling really overwhelmed while we're there. So thank you for that question. And please, if you have concerns about that as you're doing your scheduling, please talk with me about that when I reach out to start your schedule. I'll be happy to help you figure out ways to avoid having any one person stretched too thin. Okay, so we do have something new that we're going to be monitoring for this year, and David's going to come back on and talk to us about this because it does touch all federal programs.
So is Harin on?
Yes, I'm here.
Harin, do you want to take the lead on this one?
I will be glad to.
Okay.
So hi everyone. So KDE is, as mentioned, taking a new approach to this year. Keep in mind what Dr. Foster said at the beginning of this discussion. The whole point of this process is to allow for continuous improvement. And so we are going to be looking at procurement activities across all federal programs. The way we're going to do this is hopefully in a way which does not place any additional burden on the district. So we're going to do all procurement activities remotely. We will not be doing any on-site visits to add to the additional visits that you're already going to be having. We will have a checklist that we'll upload to the SharePoint folder for each district. We'll ask that you complete that checklist and upload the necessary documentation 2 weeks prior to your normal visits for Title I and everything else. So we're all on the same schedule and you don't have to remember multiple dates. I will reach out to you if we have any questions. And if you have any questions at the district level, please feel free to reach out to me also at any point in time. We will not have an exit interview unless the district wants to have one. Typically for the procurement monitoring, I anticipate that the contact at the district will be either the finance officer or somebody the finance officer designates, but we will give you an opportunity to fill that out on a checklist, and that's the person that I will make sure I contact. So the purpose of this activity is to look at all federal programs. So you'll notice on the documentation that we ask you to provide evidence of certain activities, but they can be activities using any source of funds covered today. So it could be a procurement activity in Title I or Title II or Title III or whatever else it might be. So I promise we'll make this piece painless because it is the first year that we're doing it. But our hope is that we do it remotely and we don't add onto your additional time that you need for the other programs. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you. Okay, so as you move along the process to prepare for your monitoring visit, if you have specific questions that are related to your programs, please feel free to reach out to any of the contacts listed here. And you will have access to this presentation shortly after the call so that you can go back and refer to this slide as you need to and know who to reach out to with questions. If you have initial procurement questions, you can reach out to either me or Erin Sedeth in the Title I office, and we would be happy to help you get connected with the appropriate person for those questions. And that actually concludes our presentation today. So before we hop off of here, are there any other lingering questions?
Nothing else has come through the chat yet.
Okay. Well, the party has now officially started then. So please feel free to reach out to any of us at any point as you're preparing if you have questions. We are always happy to help you to relieve your fears or to point you in the right direction to get the resources that you need. So thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead. Is there a question, David?
Yeah, there was
Sorry.
one question. I just wanted
Okay.
to make sure you saw it. Is the preschool STARS quality rating a component to be considered?
This is Tammy, if you would like me to help with that.
Yes, please.
Some of the pieces of evidence that we're going to ask for are going to be similar to some of the things that are part of the STARS quality rating, but no, the two things are unrelated. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks, was the response to that.
Good deal. Okay. If there are no other questions, then I believe we're ready to wrap up. And just as a reminder, you're going to be receiving an email with access to your district's SharePoint folder sometime around November 15th. So be on the lookout for that. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
That's okay. I didn't want to interrupt you.
You're fine.
You can finish your thought if you need to.
It's okay.
Okay, should we assume all programs are being monitored, or will we receive information regarding only specific programs for districts?
The programs applicable to your district should have been outlined in your notification letter, I believe. So basically, for the title programs, if you receive funding for title programs, then assume that title is going to be visiting you. If you transfer title funds into Title I or into other titles, then you won't be visited by that program where you've transferred the funds. You'll be visited by the program that actually is housing the funds. In terms of preschool and alternative education, do you guys want to speak to that? I think they may have a list of applicable sites.
Well, as far as alternative, sorry.
Go ahead.
As far as alternative, I have reached out to each district and I've heard back from each district as far as confirmation of each program. As of right now, it looks like we will be going to every district. Every district has at least one program as far as alt ed. So I've already, been in contact with someone regarding that, and I don't know. Does that answer the question? I don't.
Yeah,
just wanting to know who's being monitored. We'll be in each program.
I can further that too. There was a follow-up comment that said the notification letter says programs may be monitored. I just wanted to make sure it was not selective, but inclusive of all programs. So yes, like Erica said, if you have that program, it will be monitored for sure.
And when we send the program scheduling tool out at that 8-week mark, it will be an Excel spreadsheet, and it will have a row for each program that's coming. So it should be very clear at that point who needs to be getting ready for our visit.
Nothing else in there at this time.
Okay. Well, if you think of questions after we hang up from here, please feel free to reach out to me or to anyone you've heard from on the call today, and we would be happy to help you. Otherwise, November 15th-ish, look for that SharePoint folder to be released to you, and then at the 8 or 10 week mark before your program or before your monitoring event, you should hear from me to get started on your preparation. And with that, that concludes our presentation today, and we'll get this recording out to you as soon as we can. And in the meantime, have a great afternoon and a fun and safe and hopefully dry Halloween.